I should have known using my older sister's ID was a terrible idea the moment the bouncer held it up to the light and looked from the photo to my face with raised eyebrows. But I was 20, desperate to go clubbing with my friends who were all 21. And my sister Mia and I looked similar enough that I'd gotten away with it twice before. What I didn't anticipate was the bouncer confiscating the fake ID, giving me a lecture about identity fraud, and then, 6 weeks later, showing up as my new roommate in the apartment I just signed a lease for. Life has a twisted sense of humor. Before we get into how this disaster turned into the most awkward living situation imaginable, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and please subscribe to help the channel grow. This story is absolutely chaotic. My name is Carmen Torres. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a junior at Boston University studying journalism. My sister Mia is 25, works in finance, and had always been the responsible one while I was the one who made questionable decisions and dealt with the consequences later. Using her ID to get into clubs fell firmly into the questionable decisions category. But in my defense, I just wanted to experience normal college nightlife like my friends. The incident happened at Lotus, one of the more popular clubs near campus. My friends and I had gotten dressed up, pre-gamed at someone's apartment, and were feeling confident when we got to the door around 11 p.m. The line was long and there were 2 bouncers checking IDs. I'd been hoping for the older guy who barely glanced at anything. But of course I ended up in front of the other one. She was tall, probably 5'11", with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, sharp features, and these intense hazel eyes that seemed to see right through you. She was wearing all black and had this air of authority that made me immediately nervous. When I handed her my sister's ID, she looked at it, then at me, then back at it with an expression that clearly said she wasn't buying it. "This your ID?" she asked, her voice low and authoritative. "Yes," I lied, trying to sound confident. "What's your birthday?" I knew Mia's birthday by heart. March 14th, 1999. Address? I rattled off the address on the ID, which was actually our parents' house where Mia had lived before getting her own place. The bouncer studied me for another long moment, and I could see my friends ahead of me already getting inside. "You know what? I'm going to hold on to this," she said, slipping the ID into her pocket. "You can pick it up from the police station tomorrow and explain to them why you're committing identity fraud." My stomach dropped. "Wait, no, please. I'm sorry. It's my sister's I just wanted to go out with my friends. Should have thought of that before you broke the law," she said, but her tone was less harsh than her words. "Go home. Count yourself lucky I'm not calling the cops right now." I left absolutely mortified, my friends texting me asking where I'd gone. I told them what happened, spent the entire night panicking about whether I'd get in actual legal trouble, and avoided telling Mia that I'd lost her ID because she would absolutely kill me. The next day, I nervously went to the club during daytime hours, hoping to talk to someone about getting the ID back without involving police. The same bouncer from the night before was there, apparently doing some kind of inventory or maintenance work. She looked up when I walked in. "The girl who tried to pass off her sister's ID," she said, recognition in her eyes. "Gutsy. Coming back here." "I wanted to apologize," I said, "and ask if I could get the ID back without this becoming a whole legal thing. My sister doesn't know I took it, and if she finds out, it's going to cause major family drama." The bouncer leaned against the bar, studying me. "What's your real name?" "Carmen Torres." "I'm Jordan Blake, and normally I would turn that ID over to my manager who would file a report. But you're right that it would cause a lot of unnecessary drama for your sister, who didn't do anything wrong." She pulled the ID from her pocket. "So, here's the deal. I'm keeping this, and I'm going to mail it back to the address on the ID with a note explaining that someone tried to use it fraudulently. Your sister can deal with you however she sees fit." Sound fair? It was more than fair, actually. "Thank you. Really. I'm sorry for putting you in that position." "Don't do it again," Jordan said. Identity fraud is a felony, even if it's your sister's identity. And getting into clubs before you're 21 isn't worth a criminal record. I left feeling chastened, but relieved. Mia called me 3 days later, absolutely furious, having received her ID in the mail with a note from Jordan explaining the situation. I got a lecture about responsibility and respect and how disappointed she was, which honestly felt worse than any legal consequences would have been. I thought that was the end of it. One embarrassing mistake, lesson learned, moving on. Then, about 6 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. I'd been living in the dorms my first 2 years at Boo, but I'd finally saved enough to afford a room in a shared apartment with 2 other people. The landlord had told me one roommate was a grad student named Michelle who was quiet and kept to herself, and the other was someone named Jordan who worked nights, and I probably wouldn't see much. I'd signed the lease without meeting either of them because the apartment was in my budget and in a good location. Moving day was chaotic. I was hauling boxes up 3 floors, sweaty and exhausted, when I walked into the apartment and literally dropped the box I was carrying. Standing in the kitchen, drinking coffee and looking equally shocked, was Jordan Blake, the bouncer who'd confiscated my fake ID 6 weeks earlier. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, staring at me. "You're Jordan? My roommate Jordan?" My voice came out higher than normal. "Carmen Torres," she said slowly. "The identity fraud, Carmen Torres, is my new roommate. This is actually hilarious." "It's not hilarious," I said, picking up the box I dropped. "This is a nightmare." "Can I break my lease? You signed it already, so no. Besides, where else are you going to find a place this affordable near campus?" She was grinning now, clearly finding this entire situation much more entertaining than I did. "Looks like we're roommates, Carmen." The first few weeks were incredibly awkward. I tried to avoid Jordan as much as possible, which was difficult given that we shared a kitchen and bathroom. When we did interact, it was painfully polite and formal. Michelle, our other roommate, kept asking if Jordan and I had some kind of history because the tension was obvious. "We met briefly before," Jordan would say vaguely, which was technically true. But living together forced proximity and eventual actual conversation. I learned that Jordan was 26. Had been working security and bouncing for 5 years while putting herself through grad school for criminal justice. She was actually a teaching assistant at BU during the day and worked nights at various clubs and venues. She was smart, funny in a dry way, and surprisingly easy to talk to when I wasn't dying of embarrassment about our first meeting. About a month into living together, we were both in the kitchen late one night. I was stress eating ice cream while working on a paper, and Jordan came home from her shift at the club. She grabbed a spoon and joined me, which had become our weird unspoken routine. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Why'd you risk it? The fake ID thing." "You seem smart enough to know it could have ended badly." I sighed. "Because I'm 20 and all my friends are 21, and I was tired of being left out. I wanted to feel normal, to have the full college experience." "It was stupid, I know. It was stupid," she agreed. "But I get it. FOMO makes people do dumb things." She paused. "For what it's worth, you seem like you learned from it. I've been watching and you've been responsible. No parties here, no sketchy behavior. You're not the disaster I was expecting based on our first meeting." "Thanks, I think." "It's a compliment. Trust me, I've had nightmare roommates." "You're actually pretty great." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face from intimidating bouncer to something warmer. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot, but I think we can make this roommate thing work." After that conversation, things got easier. Jordan and I actually became friends. She'd tell me stories about the ridiculous things she saw working at clubs, and I'd share my journalism projects with her. She started helping me with interview techniques, using her background in criminal justice to teach me how to ask better questions. I started leaving her coffee ready for when she got home from late shifts. Somewhere around month 3 of living together, I started noticing things about Jordan I probably shouldn't have been noticing. The way she looked in her work clothes, all authority and confidence. How she was surprisingly gentle when dealing with our elderly neighbor who needed help carrying groceries. The way she laughed at my terrible jokes even when they weren't funny. The fact that she always checked to make sure I got home safe when I went out with friends. I told myself it was just admiration, appreciation for a good roommate, but I was lying to myself. I'd developed a completely inappropriate crush on the woman who'd once threatened to report me to the police. The crush became obvious to me during movie night. Jordan, Michelle, and I had started having weekly movie nights, taking turns choosing films. It was Jordan's turn, and she'd pick some psychological thriller. Halfway through, during a particularly tense scene, I'd grabbed her arm without thinking, and she'd covered my hand with hers. The contact had sent electricity through me, and I'd realized with absolute certainty that this was way more than roommate appreciation. I tried to ignore it. Jordan was older, more established, and definitely had her life together in ways I didn't. Plus, we lived together, which meant any romantic complication would make our housing situation unbearable. I was determined to keep my feelings to myself. But Michelle apparently had a better read on the situation than I did. One afternoon when Jordan was at work, Michelle cornered me in the kitchen. "So, when are you going to tell Jordan you have a crush on her?" I nearly dropped my coffee. "What? I don't. That's not ... double quotes. Carmen, you look at her like she hung the moon. And before you panic, Jordan looks at you the same way. The tension between you two is honestly exhausting to watch." "Jordan does not have feelings for me," I said firmly. "She's literally told people about the stupid fake ID thing. I'm sure she sees me as a dumb kid who made a bad decision. She tells that story because she thinks it's a cute meet cute," Michelle said. "Not because she thinks you're dumb. Trust me. I've known Jordan for 3 years. I've never seen her this soft around someone." I didn't believe Michelle, but the seed of possibility had been planted. I started paying more attention to how Jordan acted around me. The way she always saved me the last of the good coffee. How she'd wait up for me when I worked late at the student newspaper. The small touches that lingered longer than necessary. The way she looked at me sometimes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The situation came to a head during finals week. I was absolutely drowning in assignments, running on maybe 4 hours of sleep and way too much caffeine. I'd been working on a major investigative piece for my journalism capstone, and my laptop crashed, taking hours of work with it. I completely broke down, crying at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning. Jordan found me there when she got home from her shift. "Carmen, what's wrong?" I explained about the laptop, the lost work, the looming deadlines. She sat down next to me, and without saying anything, pulled me into a hug. I melted into it, and something about the combination of exhaustion and comfort made me reckless. "I have a crush on you," I mumbled into her shoulder. "And I know that's terrible timing and probably really awkward given that you're my roommate and you think I'm irresponsible because of the whole fake ID thing. But I'm so tired and stressed that I apparently have no filter anymore." Jordan pulled back to look at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't read. "You think I think you're irresponsible? I mean, our first meeting was me committing identity fraud, so ... double quotes. Carmen, that was one mistake you made when you were desperate to fit in with your friends. In the 4 months I've lived with you, I've watched you work harder than most people I know. You're dedicated to your studies. You're thoughtful. You're kind. You're actually one of the most responsible 20-year-olds I've ever met." She paused. "And for the record, I have a crush on you too. Have for a while now. I just didn't say anything because there's an age gap, and we live together and I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." I stared at her. "You have a crush on me? Is that really so surprising? You're brilliant and funny and passionate about things that matter. You light up every room you're in. I've been trying really hard not to cross any lines, but Carmen, you're not some kid I caught with a fake ID. You're an amazing woman I happen to live with and have developed very real feelings for. So, what do we do about that?" I asked quietly. "I think we should talk about it when you're not sleep-deprived and stressed about finals," she said gently. "And then, if you still feel the same way, we figure it out together, deal?" Deal. 2 weeks later, after I'd finished my finals and recovered from the semester, Jordan and I had the actual conversation. We talked about the age gap, about the complications of dating your roommate, about what would happen if things didn't work out. We set boundaries and agreed to take things slowly. And then she asked me on an actual date, to a restaurant far from campus where neither of us would run into anyone we knew. That was 6 months ago. Jordan and I have been together now for half a year, navigating the complexities of dating while living together. Michelle is endlessly amused by the whole situation, and has declared herself responsible for our relationship since she's the one who pushed me to confess my feelings. We're careful about boundaries, making sure we have our own space and identities outside the relationship. And we still laugh about how we met, though the story has gotten significantly less embarrassing with time and context. I used my sister's ID to get into a club, got caught by the bouncer, and then ended up living with her. It was humiliating and awkward and led to one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Sometimes the worst decisions and most embarrassing moments are the beginning of something you never knew you needed. And sometimes the person who calls you out on your mistakes is exactly the person who helps you become the best version of yourself.